Hello everybody, welcome and welcome back. It's lovely to have you here with me today. Today's video is about the spring section of the seasonal sampler mini quilt, and we'll get started on that in just a moment. But first, I really want to say a huge thank you to you all for the amazing support that you showed me on my video from last week. In last week's video, I sat in front of the camera for the first time and I talked a bit about my sewing journey, and it was quite personal and I was nervous about putting it out there into the world, but you all left me such lovely comments. Your kindness and support of what I'm doing was just overwhelming, and I can't thank you enough. I definitely struggle with confidence, and your lovely words and support is helping me to deal with that, and helping me to overcome that a little bit. So I just want to say a massive thank you. If you're new here, if you do check out that video, I'll link it above, as well as talking about my personal sewing journey. It is the introduction to this seasonal sampler mini quilt along that we're kind of doing here. It's just a relaxed, informal sew along where each week I'm giving some instructions for how to make the seasonal sampler mini quilt, and I'll show you that just now. So here is the mini quilt, and this is what I was talking about last week. Last week's video also has the instructions linked down below for how to make the background, the patchwork. And then each week I'm going to be talking about a different section of the sampler and giving me templates for how to make it and any tips and things like that. So this week we're talking about this section here, which uses 1/2 inch hexagons. In fact, it uses 25 1/2 inch hexagons, and this is what I'm calling the spring section of the mini quilt. It should be quite easy to make this section. It just uses hexagons, and I've added some embroidery to it as well. But let's have a closer look and talk a little bit more about how to plan your colours and how to sew the hexagons together. So here's a close-up of the mini quilt, and as I said, we're looking at this section today. And my first tip would be, when we're thinking about fabrics, don't worry too much. Pick a colour palette that really speaks to you. So here I've used predominantly pinks and some pale aqua with some darker aqua, and I've just looked through my stash of scraps and found fabrics that I like that tied into that colour palette. And I looked for small floral prints because I find that they work best with tiny patchwork. And I didn't worry too much about repeating some fabric, so as you can see I've got the same fabric here and here. A lot of people don't like to do that when they do scrappy projects, but actually I don't mind at all. I quite like the repetition of the same fabric, and I think it just ties it in nicely. I also used a plain solid colour for the centres of the flowers. So I'll talk now about how I stitch them together. So of your 25 1/2 inch hexagons, you'll need 1, 2, 3, 4 in a solid colour, and then the other 21 in your patterned fabrics. Then what I did was I made one hexagon flower. As you can see here, here's the centre, and it has 6 petals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you've never made a hexagon flower before, I'll link to the playlist on my channel, which is all about English paper piecing for beginners, and it shows you how to glue base the hexagons, how to join them together to make a hexagon flower. There's a video about doing the embroidery, and there's also a video about doing the appliqué to attach it to the backing fabric. That playlist will show you everything that you need to know to make this panel. The only difference is that we aren't making individual hexagon flowers here. We are making a hexagon flower, and then we are adding more on to make it into this long panel. So what I did was I made one flower, then I added 3 more petals, one here in the pattern fabric, one here in the solid fabric, and another patterned one here. And then as I went down, I added another row, 1, 2, 3, in the pattern fabric, and then I added another row, 1, 2, 3, and in this row there was 2 patterned and 1 solid fabric. I continued like that as I went along until I got to the bottom. I will link below to a document I've made which shows a photograph of this section and just some very brief written instructions, so you can download that, it's free, and that might just be a nice visual reference as you make this panel. But it is very simple, and as I said, that playlist on my channel has all of the details about how to do all of the techniques. There is even a video about the hand quilting, which you won't need to look at just yet, that will come at the end. I used hexiform shapes, which I've talked about in previous videos, but if you're not sure and you're not familiar with them, rather than paper shapes that you usually use for English paper piecing, hexiform are a fabric shape and it's designed to be left in, so it leaves this really nice texture. That also means that you can do your embroidery straight into them. You don't need to remove anything. I quite like to do the embroidery into the shape before I applique it to the background. But of course that's up to you. If you'd rather it be all attached to the background fabric and then do your embroidery, that's fine, that will work just as well. But you will be going through more layers. You'll be going through the top layer of fabric, your hexiform, and your backing fabric. So it may be a little bit trickier. So I hope that helps you get started with this section, the spring section. These 2 sections are the summer sections. There's already a video about the butterfly on my channel, in the playlist all about this mini quilt. And next week I will be back to show you how to do this panel right here, which is definitely one of my favourites. So I look forward to chatting to you again next week about this. So that's all for this week's video. I hope it was useful and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you wouldn't mind giving it a thumbs up, that really does help my channel out. And if you aren't a subscriber already, I'd love it if you would consider subscribing. My aim is to upload a video every Monday at about 9 PM UK time. At the moment the videos are centering around the seasonal sampler mini quilt, but after that I've got a lot more ideas for tutorials and tips and tricks that I want to share, and they will all be centred around English paper piecing and embroidery. And I also might do the odd video where I show you the things that I'm making and like a bit of a crafty catch up. If anyone would be interested in watching videos like that, then let me know. Thank you so much for your support. It really does mean everything to me. So until next week, happy sewing. Goodbye.